All right, can people hear me? Not a good sign. Can people hear me now? I think that's working, but I'm not sure.
We're saying yes.
We're saying, yeah, okay, cool. Okay, great. Tonight, we're going to talk about a new company called Arganteal. New, we've been around a few years, but we're back up. Yeah. And we're going to talk about the adaptable deployment toolkit suite that we're introducing. It works now. We're going to be adding to it as well. We call it ADepT. That's sort of a short name. You're adept and not inept. Go ahead. I'm one of the founders and the CEO. I will present very little and I'll let the guys do demos. Jason McDaniel runs our compiler section and parsing, and he will show you the existing tool as it is. You can get a free license, and we're going to show you a way to make money tonight. So stay tuned and listen, I think is the message. Mark Collins leads our development team, and he will show you where we're going with the tool, and then and how the marketplace is going to work. And then Justin Johnson is really an expert user, and he will take you through a couple of examples of using this tool. It's really about DevOps, and I'll give you a quick overview about what this is. So the ADepT tool suite provides a framework to glue together all the other existing DevOps tools. Sometimes we even say that's automating automation. You can use Ansible, Terraform, Python, Puppet, Bash, PowerShell. I don't know why I didn't put those up there. And Python, yeah, all in one workflow. So if you're doing complex deployment work, you can mix things together because you usually need to. It also allows you to put the target server parameters in very late in the process so that they can be easily substituted and changed. That's all about making scripts that you have reusable. This is not another scripting language. You upload scripts you already have, and we process them to make them reusable. It works on any layer stack because it works with kind of any language. So you can do bare metal, you can do infrastructure, you can do containers, you can do applications, and you can do application configuration, all in one tool, orchestrating tool. Broadly then, and so it works on any API and any stack layer and on any cloud, private or public. It's pretty universal. Our big differentiation is that it will be the best tool for hybrid cloud because it kind of treats all the clouds the same. So we're also developing a script marketplace. You publish a reusable script, and the key word is reusable, as a workflow on the ADepT tool, and others can find it and pay for it and use it in their work. This probably doesn't exist in any form today because we all throw scripts around and ignore them. We're trying to change that. You may also get hired as one of the authors. You can get hired as a consultant. So we're offering this particular group, since we're early in our process, a competition to get some early adopters, learn the tool, and use it, and you can get paid. We'll talk about the competition in just a second. So learn the tool, publish a workflow, and you can get a contract with us. That's the idea. And with that, I'll let Kristen present the competition rules.
I'm Kristen. I'm marketing kind of head for Arganteal right now, and we're excited about this. This is kind of the fun part. Some of this will probably make a little more sense after all of them kind of go through the tool, but basically you get your free account, like Steve was saying, and you learn to use it. When you've got a workflow that you think other people would be interested in, is valuable to your daily work, you upload it to a folder we'll have within the group that you join. What we're looking for specifically are creative solutions to these known reoccurring deployment implementation configuration problems. When Justin does his, you'll see an example of one that he's come up with that does that. When you're done, we'll need description of it, instructions, text or images that we can verify and validate of your expected inputs and outputs. And we can't have any embedded third-party rights. So when that all fits, you can upload it to the folder. We'll gonna have it open for 30 days starting tomorrow. At the end, our team will select the 5 most useful, and those winners will win a 6-month contract worth $3,000 to continue to develop workflows for the marketplace. And we assume there will be lots of interesting stuff, we hope. So there'll be additional prizes for things that are noteworthy. You can email me for details at khooper@arganteal.com, or this QR code that Jason's going to put up that way you can connect with us on Slack.
And we will put the QR
At
code
the
up at
end
the
as well.
beginning because that format's a little hard to get to in the room. So that's kind of all the commercial part of it. I'm going to do a little bit of an overview of what the tool is in preparation for Jason actually taking you through the tool. So you can see there on the far left, the inputs, which could be a script in any of those languages and a few more. We support 15 languages today. We'll support more in time. But let's say you have a Python script. You will upload that to the tool. And what we're going to do is go through a process to make it easily reusable. That's the key part. It's also the hard part. We're going to parse it, and we're going to send the data to a data repository and the command structure to a script repository. We're also going to go through, depending on what you're doing, you're going to go through and break it into functional blocks. So that, like, a functional block might be get IP address. That's a function, okay? We're going to store those as small scripts, if you will, in the script repository, and they will have a data template up in the data repository, not of the data that was necessarily in them, but of what data you need to give it to use it, okay? So then things get easier. Technology-wise, that's a whole lot of the problem. If you make them reusable, now you take the workflow tool and chain them together in a workflow, and you're using functional pieces. And then you feed that, you fill out the data list, and you feed that to a compiler, which puts that all together. What you get out is a hybrid, and by hybrid, it could be hybrid language and hybrid platform. Target specific execution script. It's the script you would run. And it will have an orchestration script, and then essentially each subscript will be in a separate package below that, and those separate packages could all be in different languages. So one could be Lua, one could be Bash. I don't think you'd have Bash and PowerShell together, but you could. And that you then take away and run against your target. So that's the current tool. I'll turn it over to Jason.
Sure. I've got the party guys right here. So thank you for party validation. Down to right here.
Oh, wow, cool. Okay.
Well, like you said, I'm Jason McDaniel, and I'm going to be stepping you through our ADepT suite. So let me go ahead and load it up, and we'll get through it. So here's the starting screen here. I'm going to go ahead and log in. And here we can see our little dashboard here. If we look on the left-hand side over here, we can see a number of icons. The first one here is going to be the scripts, which I'm going to show y'all importing of scripts. The second one is the libraries. That basically is the reusability part of making the script reusable. Then we have a workflow, the actual workflows themselves, and then compiled output, saved compiled output. Up here at the top, then we have groups, which is basically you promoting and sharing out. If you have a team, you can share it out to your team so everybody can basically leverage what you've been working on. And then over here, we have a marketplace like we've been talking about where you can get paid, get money for the scripts that you're actually making. So let me go ahead and actually import a script or a few scripts here. And I'm going to be basically doing an Azure create IP address demo here. So I'm basically adding in this folder, which has these 2 files, and it's basically going to create this folder structure as well. So I'm going to go ahead and upload that. And now we're going to see this create IP folder over here. If I look in here, we have those 2 files. I'm going to start with the main actual script that we're going to run. And so this is the main running script. It has a few variables in here that I need to fill in. And some other places in here, there's some variables that relate to the location of where I'm going to be setting this up for the IP address. Something of note here is this import statement here. This import statement refers to another module, which again is this file that I have over here. And so what we're first going to do is actually parse this file to get all of its variables and stuff located. But then we're going to move on to the actual module script. So let me first parse this. And what the parsing is doing here is it's actually going through and parsing the script, of course, but it's identifying all those variables, right? And so in this context, there are some that I need to fill in and some that I don't. For example, this one is just function call, so I don't need to actually replace that one. So I'm going to mark it as don't care. So I'm going to go through these that I know that are don't cares. And then the rest of them I'm going to leave as variables that I want to replace later down the line. And so this, now I'm going to actually click merging. Oh, by the way, there's a type down here. And so this one is actually going to be the script I'm running. So it's a type of script. And then there's a dependency type, a configuration type, and a data set. And then the next script I'm going to go through is actually what we call dependency. And I'll describe what that means later. So I'm going to click merge. And when I click merge, we're going to see a little diff window here. And if I scroll down the window, we're going to get some highlights here. This indicates those little areas that I actually indicated that these are variables that I want to replace in the script. And this makes it reusable. Now we have actual values over here on the right that give you the name of the variable so you don't forget what it was called, but it also gives it a unique identifier because, as we all know, we have variables that have the same name in scripts over and over and over again. So we need to identify those as unique variables for replacement. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. And I'm going to keep the same folder structure. It defaults to that. So I'm going to keep it to being that same file folder structure. And then we're going to move on to this other file. This is what we call a dependency file because it's not actually run by itself. It's a file that the main script is actually dependent on. It imports it, right? So I'm going to parse this one as well. But because this is a dependency file, in this case, there's nothing in here that I want to replace. So once it's done actually parsing it, I'm going to go to the very top left over here and just click this part, which will basically mark everything as don't care. I don't want it to replace anything in here, so I'm just going to mark it as don't care. And then down here, I'm actually going to set the type now. So it's called a dependency. And again, the dependency just means it's going to be tagging along. It's not going to be run on its own. So I'm going to go ahead and merge that. And there's no changes in here. So I'm going to go ahead and just save it as is. And we're going to just move it over to the same folder location. And now if I go over to my libraries tab over here, we can now see this new create IP folder that's been created, which is that same folder structure as before. And now we actually have the files that have been normalized into being able to be reusable. And with these libraries now, I can actually go over to my workflow tab and create a new workflow. And now that I made a new workflow by pressing this little plus here, I can go back over to my libraries and I can start pulling and clicking and dragging things over. So inside of this workflow, I can say I want to add this one. And this one's highlighted red because it's a dependency. So it gives you that visual representation that it's actually a dependency file type. And then I can click the other script. And again, it has a different coloring style. And here we can see that this is the script. So what this workflow is actually showing is that this is the order of the scripts that it's going to execute in. So the red one is a dependency, so it's not going to run it. But the other scripts that would be the same color are going to be executed in that specific ordering. And you'll see more of this when we get to Justin. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to save this workflow and call it what I'm going to be doing, which is create IP. And now the next thing that I want to do is to actually promote this thing, because this is actually in a state right now. If I look at the design parameters, which is over here on the right, this is some credential information. Sorry, guys, I'm not going to give you all my credentials, but here is some credential information. So this is a nice way to actually represent this as a script that somebody else could use. So I'm going to go over to my workflow and I'm going to go over to the new create IP that I created and I'm going to promote it. So here's this little promotion button. If I click that, now I'm given the number of groups. So this is tied to your user. And what I'm going to do is actually just put it into this new competition group that I created. And I'm going to go ahead and promote it up. And here we can see that it was successful. If I go over to the group tab now, and I select the workflow and I select the competition, we'll now see that new workflow tied there as well. And so this correlates to also to the marketplace, which you'll see Mark actually demonstrate later. So now if I go back here, I actually want this thing to run, right? So I'm going to go over here and go to dependencies, design parameters. And just to show y'all that this actually does work, I'm actually going to replace these. And I'm still not going to give my credentials. Whoops, get back here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and save that. And then it's now saved the workflow again. So now I'm going to go over here to the top left and click compile. And so what this is doing, it's actually use our compiler to now leverage those design parameters and actually inject them into the code itself. So now you can see here this create public IP. If I scroll down, we'll now see those replacements that I've done for the design parameters there. And the defaults there that are also tagged along as well. So the locations and the groups and stuff like that are also there. And then of course the utilities is a dependency, so it doesn't change. But what we're also creating with the compilation is an execution script. And what this execution script does is it maintains that ordering of what you're doing inside the workflow. So this will actually run each of those different scripts in the proper ordering. And you can use ours, you can use your own, it doesn't really matter, but we nicely pack it up for you. So this will run for you. And so I'm going to go ahead and download it. So what this is going to do is provide me a nice little zip file of all these scripts together. And if I go to that location and go ahead and unzip it real quick. Oh, Windows. Oh, Windows. While that's thinking about it. Yeah, no. I'm going to move over to actually running it. So I've actually got it's a little bit baking show here. I've actually got a version of it that actually has my credentials here. It's the exact same scripts, but it actually contains my credentials in it. And so it has the orchestration script right here, this create IP run right here. So I'm going to go ahead and run that. And so this is actually leveraging the Azure modules inside the Python scripts in order to actually create the public IP address. And what we'll see here on the screen here shortly is it'll actually print out that public IP that it actually generates over at Azure. And Azure is notoriously slow for its API calls. There you go. So here you can see that it actually did it with the appropriate name that I provided it, and it gives me a public IP address. Yay. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and give it off to Mark here, and he'll keep going on to future development.
Cool.
So let me go ahead and stop sharing.
Do it. Yeah,
He's got it. He's got
should
it.
be. Well, thanks, Jason. Again, Mark Collins, tonight is just pre-release stuff. This is not shipping. This is still under development, but wanted to give you guys just a preview of what's actually coming. And this is actually the UI as it exists today. The real big changes here are the user management and the account components. And the reason for these are just in support of being able to buy and sell scripts on the marketplace, what you've purchased. So if you're actually building a workflow for somebody else and you've used somebody else's workflow, that actually gets included in what your cost is for the script that they download, so that everybody's accounted for when you're building it. So you'll have payments, purchasing, selling, and you can also rate each other's scripts based upon how well you think it's actually operated for what you need to get done. So first thing that we're going to do, I've got to move this because this is probably crazy, is that over here under the marketplace itself, what you'll see is that this is just an open switch script. Pretty simple. You've got a buy it now component. You're going to see ratings on the script itself. You'll have different ways that you can actually pay for the script. You'll see who the author is. And then obviously you'll be able to actually view the script itself to determine if that's something you want to be able to do when you're using your script or when you're writing your workflow. Once that's done, that actually comes down into your own personal space, not into your group space, because obviously you didn't purchase it for the group that you're in, you purchased it for yourself. What you're seeing here actually build on the screen is these are all the scripts that you have in your personal library. They can be thousands of scripts. We've got some folks that are interested in this that are looking at over 1 million scripts in this. Now they're all different types. These are everything from SQL Server to Terraform to Ansible and those types of things. But the reason for this is that our backend store, one of the things that we're doing is imagine you've got 1 million scripts you've got to go through. You have to have a way to quickly find them. And that's what the search criteria is for. in your library set is that you can actually drill down and say, okay, I want you to go find me any scripts that happen to be Azure based, right? And then from there, I want to know ones that are, happen to be written in Bash, right? And so it's a progressive search component as you actually go through the data structure itself. But what's nice about this is that when I go to build a brand new workflow, and we're going to pull the workflow in, and I want to pull down the open switch script that I just bought down off of the marketplace and pull a couple of those other different pieces in, those are available to you. I can then take them, change any of the design parameters, just like you would with a normal script. I'm going to move this up here now. Notice, again, you still have the same compile type, whether or not it's Bash, whatever language output that you happen to use. You can save that based upon whatever directory structure it's already in. As we're moving towards our graph backend, you can really put that in any location you want. We actually use tag structures or word clouds to actually define each of those scripts so you can quickly navigate in and out of the large script stores that you'll be working with. In this particular instance, I'll just put it as root, and we're going to call this one as open switch 5. Now, here is where you can actually assign tag structures to it. Again, the backend tagging structure is not complete or operational yet. It's in process, and I'll show you that in a little bit. You can assign description components about it. And one of the other things we're also doing is focusing on how you can actually secure those scripts so that nobody else can use them. You don't want somebody going in there building a script, and then all of a sudden everybody takes your code, and that's now their deployment code as well. So these are just a number of different ways that you'll actually be able to secure your scripts, from tamper resistance to you can't duplicate the scripts to completely obfuscating the code itself. So we'll save that. And when you go in, you will see that you now have your open switch script. So this is the main component. The next version of the code after this will actually be moving more towards our docking structure. And it's already timed out. So what we'll also be introducing is a little bit better navigation components on the top. We'll also have what we call interrogators. As you're looking at all these scripts, you can imagine, especially with one that Justin's going to show us that's got 19 different scripts to make this work. There's a lot of target information that you may want to actually do automatically. What the interrogators will do is they will interrogate the target platform itself, look at what the field structures and values are that have to be filled out, and automatically fill those out for you. And then the execution component will actually launch it onto the target machine and execute it for you, and then give you updates as to the status. The learn components really kind of focuses on our next piece, which is our machine learning component. What we've actually built is a tool that allows us to go out and scrub, whether they're web repositories such as GitHub, or maybe you've got an internal drive that your company uses to store all of your scripts and data. We can actually go to those locations. You can tell the script bot itself what type of code you're looking for, not only from language, but the actual constructs of the code itself. And it will go out there and start interrogating the code. Once it pulls that in, it begins to extract it. We run it through a full parsing process where we actually begin to normalize everything to SIM level structures. And if you're not familiar with the SIM, that's the DMTF's common information model. Everything that's done in the computing environment today follows that model. So for us, if we can normalize those scripts to a standard structure, what that means is that we can now do functional equivalency on code, whether it be inside of Python or PowerShell or any other different language construct. And that's what we'll actually be doing inside of here. And the way that we do that as well is we create word clouds around each of these scripts to determine what they're doing internally. Pretty rudimentary right now, but this is actually from Microsoft and Amazon's own code repositories and some of the stuff that they've done. And what we actually do is we start creating, kind of think of this as the Muppet process. Somebody's got a Cookie Monster emoji, which I just love. But the whole process here is to determine across all the scripts in your repository and your organization's repository, which ones are the most similar and which ones are the most different, because the similarities between each tell you what you can actually turn into libraries that everybody can then use as a resource. And what makes each one of them unique are the pieces that we will then leverage and what will make your workflow and script unique as well. And so that's kind of what our ML component is doing. And that's where we believe we can actually start doing reasoning analysis to look at functionality and start to suggest when somebody wants to actually deploy an application, what are the steps that you need to do in order to deploy that app? So with that, I will turn it back over to Justin Johnson, who's one of our users, to actually show you what he's done in PowerShell.
Thanks, Mark.
Mhm.
Appreciate that.
I know.
Okay, I guess just a little bit, I can't talk anymore. A little background about myself. Been a consultant and an IT trainer, mainly in the Microsoft realm for about 20 years now. And this tool, I guess I'll just be very blunt about it, has a little learning curve with it. So it does take a little while to learn, but once you get it under wraps, it can definitely augment and make your life a lot easier, put it this way. A lot of stuff I do, you know, Exchange deployments, SQL deployments, stuff up in Azure, you name it, backend stuff, typically do that stuff. And the biggest thing I always did was take my code and, you know, use it for one project, then have to figure out the next project wise, you know, 2 years down the road, even though it's really similar, I always forgot where the code was, or it's somebody's, you know, some OneDrive, some site that I couldn't find, et cetera. So this is a great management tool for one. And for two, once you do basically generalize these types of scripts and workflows, it's so much simpler to run them again. For example, I'm going to pull up one that I have, just create this one. Did this a few weeks ago. It does have quite a few steps on it. But the biggest thing with this is that each of these is just a simple task. There is 18 of them, but it does go out to Azure and grabs all the security recommendations, grabs all the financial information. So you do have to have certain rights, of course, with this. And then spits back out. I'll just upload it to a new folder. Again, I'll call this demo. Right there. And then I'll upload the files. Notice that even for 18 files, takes 15, 20 seconds, whatever it does. But my point is this. First time I got tasked to do this type of project for this company, Fortune 500 company, to write all the scripts and everything else did take me probably 20, 30 hours to get it all working correctly. And then subsequent runs, of course, I got to run it, change a few variables, and wait 30 minutes and get an output. So it is really nice in that aspect. But kind of like Mark showed you, take my files right here and then parse them all and get the variables I want, of course. I've already done this earlier today, so I'm not going to bore you with that. But notice it under my demo 914 right here. Here's all my scripts. And again, I copied it. When I parsed them, it copied it from the private store to the private library that only I can see. So here's my demo 914. And these are all the files I can use then for my workflow. So if I go to my workflow, which I've already kind of baked this out too, I'll see all 18 different steps in this process. Of course, with these various steps, I can move them up and down by just clicking and dragging them. I can bring it back to the top and bring it back down one more. I can indent and dedent them to make parent-child relationships if that's what the code calls for. So for example, if I want to indent this one, notice it indents everything else subsequent to that. But then if I wanted to dedent this one right here, takes it back out, so forth and so on. If I want to, these don't really call for that type of scenario. Also, if I had multiple scripts that I want to run in parallel, I could specify 2 different ones to run in parallel right here. I could do an input and output for my various PowerShell scripts. And I also could do stop on failure, continue on fail. Because in a lot of cases, you don't want to continue the script on failures, obviously. it's a lot harder to undo things that you've already done, especially on a failure. So, so once I'm done with that, this quote will create a orchestrator script or an execution script, however you want to call it. My compile type I could have an orchestrator script, execution script in Python, Java, or Bash for these PowerShell scripts. Doesn't really matter as far as this kind of preference, obviously. When I do hit compile, there we go. Brings all the files in there. And again, here's my orchestrator script. And once I'm done with that, I can download it and then run that. I download all, just kind of like Jason showed you as well. Gets a zip file, and then I can run this on any system through PowerShell. I'll just call the orchestrator script, and I'll run these in sequential order based upon whatever the orchestrator script has in it. But some things I didn't show you real fast that Mark kind of alluded to. These various workflows, I can tag them myself. We'll just save as, sorry. Tag them myself like right here, so I can search for them in a better manner. Again, later on, we'll be able to put a price tag on this as well. And I have, I think, about 7,000 scripts in my repository right now. So kind of like Mark showed as well, if I go down here, oops, let me get out of this into my libraries, exactly. I can go to my platform and just do more filters, like again, like Mark showed. I'm going to look at just my Azure files. That doesn't do a lot for me since I'll have too many Azure files. But if I go to Azure, then just go to Python, I don't have very many at all. It should then drastically reduce that. Yeah, I don't have any actually. So here's my PowerShell scripts. But my point as well, I guess I'm kind of rambling right here, but what I did do, if you look right here, here's the end report. Let me minimize this. It's out of the way. And again, this took about 30 minutes to run. This is over 100 pages long, and just not only gives the Microsoft Secure Score, the score breakdown as far as this corporation right here, and it's a financial company, but all the different things they need to work on, and also cost, how much the Azure spend was, various security issues they have. And again, this goes on and on and on. But I did this once. Now for second, third, fourth, fifth companies, I can do this within 5% of the time I used to do it. And I don't know about you, but if you're consultants, typically like mechanics where, you know, this job costs, you've already bid it out for 40 hours. It's kind of nice to do this in 30 minutes and do whatever else you want to for the next 39.5 hours. So kind of joking aside, but it does save a lot of time and save a lot of effort if you start using the tool effectively. And again, it's a great management tool. And now you can get paid for it. And I do see this as kind of a future where I've uploaded a lot of stuff to GitHub before. Yes, it's nice to share, but it's also nice to be recognized for time, and time is money, like we all know. So it's a good way to, you know, get best of both worlds, put it that way. So if you would put the screen share, I'll stop sharing and put the presentation back up momentarily. So again, there is a competition. It does run for the next 30 days. Again, the 5 most used for workflows. You can sign up for your free account with Kristen's email address right there, or the biggest thing right there, just if you can scan that, scan the code right there, it'll take you right to our Slack channel and get you signed up as well. And if you don't want to do the competition, that's fine as well, but I would recommend just checking out the tool and trying to use the tool. Again, if you need help, let us know. We'll be glad to walk you through some things. It did take me, you know, a couple phone calls with Mark saying, okay, how does this really work and how's this really laid out? But once you get used to it, it is definitely a time saver and is definitely, you know, made my life a lot easier in a lot of situations. So any questions?
If you have a question, how else? Where do these workflows run?
You typically run them local. I don't know.
Depends on the target machine.
Yeah,
Several of the folks that have used this, we have air gap systems, so we can't actually touch those remote machines. So we have to produce, that's part of the reason for the download component. There's a save component where you can actually save them in the repository and then actually connect to the target machine and execute them there.
So there will evolve two versions, which he mentioned very quickly. Right now, you export it and take it away. You will be able to run it from a runner in the tool in the next generation as well. It just depends on what environment, right?
The environment we're currently in, we cannot do that. We're not allowed.
So let's say you're like a large company, let's say a multi-million-dollar company, and you have like a lot of users. Like, how well is it done right now to manage all those users and like the payments and all that?
So the payment piece is not ready to go yet. We're just showing you guys where we're headed.
Okay.
It is not ready for release yet.
In an organization.
Oh,
Sorry. I didn't realize I was muted. So the question was, how's this go in a large organization, right? And the marketplace component, the marketplace is just in development right now. It's not ready to be released yet. I can tell you a couple of the large organizations that are looking at this right now, they're looking at the ML component, because the reality is they've come to understand that they've got a huge sunk cost in all these scripts that are littered across the corporations, right? So you've got Python scripts and Bash scripts and PowerShell scripts, but they honestly don't know what they have, they don't know where they are, and they don't know what they do. So the whole reason we took this approach was to give them the ability to actually uncover what they actually have first and foremost, and then evaluate and analyze those scripts against one another to determine what they do and find out how many times have I reinvented the wheel and what's that sunk cost mean to me and how do I leverage that so that the next guy that comes on board doesn't do the exact same thing.
There's a lot of application inside the company,
Right.
but also like outside, like there's a lot more smart people there also.
Right. So why build it if somebody outside has already done it? Let's grab it in the marketplace, put it in there, and then do our deployment from that.
But that's a key point, right? Is you're capturing that domain knowledge from an expert, right? And now you're able to reuse that. You know that it works, you know that it's actually functional. Now you don't need to know how it works, right? You can just now use it.
Follow-up question. So assuming let's say I buy a script.
Oh, so the question was support on the scripts themselves. That's really on the developer of the script. That's not on us. Think of this as kind of like the app store, is that if you build an app and you go out and you create a new version of it, you're the one that's actually doing that. We're not doing that. We will make it available to you, those mechanisms, but we're not supporting your scripts.
So you have
Because
some
we're
sort of
not-
rating system.
Well,
Yeah.
And an ability to get to the author.
Right.
Okay.
Like I'm not an Ansible expert. Okay.
Right.
I would leave that to Greg. I don't want to touch it. Okay. Or if we've got a Terraform question, or if we've got a YAML question or a Python questions go to Jason. Right. The object here is to just make the platform available to people and be agnostic as to what the scripting language is.
Yeah, it's like, if there was a big company, I would want guarantees, like, for example, I download something and then, well, there's also like some security questions there, but if I download something, I want to make sure that like whatever I'm buying is going to be, it's going to have some continuity data. It's like somebody's going to be able to support it for a while. And I wondered maybe there's a way to maybe build in like contracts or something with somebody that you.
Yeah, we've already discussed it internally as well,
Okay.
to be able to handle contracting
Yeah,
and stuff like that.
yeah.
That's why on one of the screens, it talked about even being able to get in contact with the contractor.
Oh,
yeah, that
was later.
That was on a
later.
different one. Yeah,
On one of my slides.
yeah.
So I wanted to touch on one other thing that was sort of tangential. In a bigger organization, put the marketplace aside for a minute. You let experts perfect the libraries and you can let a little lower level person use them because you're making functional libraries. And this is as we scale and we don't have all the engineers we need, as you were saying. You're gonna, the experts publish libraries, the workers do workflows. And that can really help a bigger organization organize a DevOps team.
Support for AWS CDK.
Or I didn't hear you.
Support for AWS CDK.
Not
Cloud
currently there,
Public.
not currently there,
Okay, Pulumi.
not currently there.
Okay.
Mhm.
And we can add languages over time.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest issue is just creating the parser for it.
Yeah.
That's the biggest amount of work because we go through the full AST. And we're going to be using that for functional equivalency. So we have to do it. We rip the entire script apart. And parsing questions go to Joe.
The only other one is confirmation is
We're not doing anything specifically. What script environment are they using to do those?
I mean, typically you just push JSON on that, the CloudFormation API. They use.
And we can do JSON structures. We can do HTML structures. We can do SQL, although we don't support all SQL constructs because there's got to be at least a dozen different ones out there right now. I think we cover 8 different ones. Postgres, Maria, MySQL, Microsoft SQL Server, Oracle PL SQL. I don't remember the other ones were. I'd have to ask Jack. But for that, because eventually what we would like to do is also data equivalency. And if we're moving towards a SIM model, that will be possible.
Somebody asked about the, how can I handle tool help if I want to handle licensing and security of some code?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
It's in the chat window. Oh, okay. How can the tool help me if I want to handle licensing and security of the code on the marketplace?
So there's an encryption component when you actually compile your code piece. And we can handle that offline and show them how that's done.
Yeah, you showed a screen with the whole setup.
Yeah, there's a ton of different ways that you can actually lock down. Even to the point where as people start to download it and execute it, it'll actually send you an email that says this individual has actually executed your code. It's tamper resistant. So if you go in there and try and use a hex editor and modify it, it will shut the code down. If you copy it and try and duplicate it, it will shut the code down. If you lock it down for specific users or for specific hosts, it will lock it down. I'm sure there's probably 20 other different ways that one of you guys can find to circumvent it, at which point we would love for you to tell us. And then we will try and lock it down from that perspective as well, because ultimately, this is your livelihood. If you start putting stuff up on the marketplace and start sharing these download scripts, hey, I want to install Procore ERP system, right? That's a long, exhaustive deployment. It really is, with a lot of different locations where things can go wrong, just like doing Microsoft Dynamics or some other place or some other application. Once you get those down and it's in a recreatable fashion, you actually put those into the marketplace and then put the target parameters there to where all anybody has to do is change the target parameters, the design parameters, recompile, and now they can actually do that deployment for your location and for your environment. Cool. Well, appreciate it. Thank you, folks.
Thanks for your time, guys.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.